Okay. Thank you, Helen.
Oh, certainly.
Okay. Hopefully you should be able to see my screen.
Yeah, the screen's gone all peculiar.
Is it not the PowerPoint?
Okay. It's fine for me. I can see a title page.
Okay, that's a good start. I'm really out of practice with Zoom, actually. I haven't been on Zoom in probably 2 years, so forgive me.
Oh, wow.
We do everything in person at FJC. We've gone back to in person. But anyway, thank you for having me. My name's Helen Hills. I'm an independent domestic violence advisor at FJC. So I'm going to talk briefly about domestic abuse and then the support we offer. So just briefly, domestic abuse is one strand of violence against women and girls, which the UN categorises as both a cause and a consequence of gender inequality. So other forms of violence against women and girls include sexual violence, stalking, harassment, FGM, trafficking, and also intimidation and harassment at work, in education and in public, which I don't think springs to mind when people think of violence against women and girls, but this street harassment that's really intrusive and makes up part of women's lives is very much included now in that definition. The Mayor of London has a strategy that has 4 priorities, and it's preventing and reducing violence against women and girls, supporting all victims and survivors, holding perpetrators to account, and building trust and confidence. They have a long way to go on that last one, I think. But the Domestic Abuse Act of 2021 provided a statutory definition of domestic abuse that we hadn't had until that point. So it defines it as a single incident, course of conduct, or pattern of abusive behaviour between individuals aged 16 or over, it was 18 prior to this definition, who are personally connected, so if they're family members, intimate partners, or former partners. This definition has brought about really significant change in that children are seen as victims in their own right. They're no longer referred to as witnessing abuse, being exposed to abuse. They are victims in their own right, which is really important to acknowledge. Also, economic abuse for the first time is included in this definition. And anybody who works in the sector will know this makes up a huge part of domestic abuse. Often survivors have no access to funds, and that's why it's so difficult to escape. So it's great that that's now in the definition. Just briefly, in Croydon, I think we have 6 open domestic homicide reviews. So anytime there's a domestic homicide, all of the agencies in the borough are then kind of come together and discuss what went wrong, how this happened, how the families were known to services if they were known. It's like a serious case review. So the children's social care equivalent is a serious case review. And what we know about domestic homicide is that it's highly gendered. So domestic abuse can affect anybody regardless of sex or gender, but it is very much gendered. So when we look at the statistics, this is the ONS data between March 2018 and 2020, there were 362 domestic homicides, 276 women were killed and 86 men, and the suspects were overwhelmingly male as well. There's something now called the femicide census, set up by an incredible woman, Karen Ngala-Smith, who now records all of the women that are murdered by men. It's not very pleasant reading, but it's really, really important and significant work. So in 2020, 110 women were killed by men in England and Wales. The vast majority were by their former partner. Okay. Male survivors, yes. So although it's gendered, we obviously support men as well. At FJC, we recognise there are sometimes additional barriers to men disclosing. Although when you look at the crime statistics, it doesn't seem to be vastly different. Men do seem to report at similar levels of women. But there's also specialist support for men, and we'd always redirect men to that if that's what they'd feel more comfortable with. So I'm just going to briefly touch on coercive control. So the absolute bedrock of domestic abuse is coercive control. It's been criminal since 2015. We have very few convictions for coercive control as a standalone offence, much more likely to get convicted alongside other charges when there's been physical violence. But coercive control is a really targeted, personalised form of abuse where the perpetrator decides to get absolute control of the person they're choosing to abuse. They do this by restricting their means for escaping, controlling money, monitoring where they go, exploiting them, isolating from sources of support. And it's really incredibly difficult to escape this. It's a liberty crime. It's a deprivation of somebody's liberty. Evan Stark has emphasised this. He's a sociologist that speaks a lot about coercive control, and actually the definition that's in our law, in Westminster law, comes from Evan Stark's work. So it's a core tenet of domestic abuse. So it's always there. It's always in the background. And not only is it always there, but it's actually really high risk. We're really concerned about coercive control. So if there's a high level of coercive control, that's more likely to predict a domestic homicide than any form of physical violence. So we need to be really aware of coercive control and how to spot it, which is our job at FJC. I see that RASASC are here, so I'm not going to talk about sexual violence at all. Abby will be doing that, because we do talk about sexual violence a lot at FJC. A lot of the women we support haven't conceptualized what they're experiencing as sexual violence, despite disclosing significant sexual violence. And I think that's a lot to do with coercive control, but also a lot to do with the law. You know, it wasn't a crime. Rape and marriage was only criminalized in 1991. So we still haven't caught up, I think. And lots of women that come to us will tell us what they've been experiencing, but aren't really able to sort of frame that as sexual abuse. But I'm not going to go into it much because Abby will do that. Okay, so children. At FJC, we only support adults. We only support, well, those 16 and over. However, children are victims in their own right. It's always a safeguarding issue, domestic abuse. And children are suffering multiple terrible consequences of domestic abuse, the ultimate risk being death. So Women's Aid had a big study of the children murdered during court-ordered child contact with perpetrators. It makes horrible reading, but it's really important to learn from. CAFCAS and Women's Aid did this project together. And they found that 2/3 of the cases sampled in this big study involved allegations of abuse, yet 23% of those cases unsupervised contact was given to the perpetrators at the first hearing. Hopefully things are changing, especially with the Domestic Abuse Act highlighting how terrible it is for children to be exposed to domestic abuse. The consequences can be dire, can be deadly, but most usually children are suffering in ways that they feel guilty, insecure, scared, alone. They might feel ambivalent towards their parents. They might grow up in an environment where they believe that this behaviour is normal, which will then, you know, have a knock-on effect. It's not particularly useful to talk about this in the context of a cycle of violence, because that can be very victim blaming and very it sort of feeds into a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way and excuses perpetrators' behaviour, whereas the vast majority of children who grow up in homes with their domestic abuse don't go on to perpetrate violence at all. They're more likely to be subjected to it than perpetrate it. But when it comes to children, it's always an issue for social care, for children's social care. There are services in Croydon now that provide specialist children's counselling. There's one called Bamboo, and Victim Support also have one called Safer Spaces. Their referral criteria is slightly different, but basically it's for the ages of 5 up. So for young children, there is support now, which there hadn't been for a long time. So domestic abuse is a safeguarding issue. It's in statutory. It's in legislation, it's in the Care Act, it's the Domestic Abuse Act now. Serious case reviews very frequently cite domestic abuse, and domestic homicide reviews always say that there's a need to share information. The outcomes and the learning from serious case reviews and domestic homicide reviews really mirror each other, and emphasise the need for more information sharing. So, the FJC. We are located in the middle of Croydon. Our address is confidential. We don't share it unless somebody has an appointment with us. We're a multidisciplinary team, and we hope to provide a sort of one-stop shop wraparound service to survivors of domestic abuse. So whoever comes to us, we'll do an assessment. We use the Safe Lives Risk Assessment Checklist. So we'll ask about their experiences. We're very much a consent-based service, so we'll only support those who actively want that support. So please, if you want to refer, make sure you have that consent to do so and explain the service beforehand. So we'll complete this assessment and then come up with a support and safety plan to keep that person as safe and supported as possible. Each person's safety plan will be completely different, but in general, lots of people that come to us might want to talk to a solicitor. So we have solicitors in the building here to provide that advice on obtaining injunctions. They can talk about child arrangements orders. the injunction that they're likely to apply for would be a non-molestation order or an occupation order, which means the perpetrator cannot contact them or is removed from the home. So someone can come into our service, see us, get that safety plan in place, see a solicitor straight away and be in court over the next couple of days to get those injunctions. So when it works well, it can work really well. We also we have a specialist no recourse to public funds worker. So we're seeing a massive increase actually in referrals for women who have no recourse, and it is usually women. So she can then provide, that additional advocacy to make sure they're supported, because it's so incredibly difficult to flee from an abusive person if you have no recourse to public funds. We also then have community domestic abuse advisors like me who go out into the community, and if you wanted to make a referral and somebody isn't able to physically come to the FJC or is under such a high level of coercive control that they're only allowed out of the house for specific things like doctor's appointments or the school run, we can come and meet them at those times. We really want to make sure we're out there and catch survivors when it's safe to do so, to have that chat. We regularly do this in the community with schools, with doctors, whoever it is that's referring and really wants to get somebody support, so we can be really flexible about that. We also provide support and advice to practitioners. So please, if you ever have any queries about domestic abuse, you don't have to have a referral to make, you don't have to have consent, you can pick up the phone to just get some advice. You don't need to give us names, we can always just have a chat about advice and next steps to take. And we also deliver training that's all free, of course, so if you wanted us to come and deliver training to you, we can. We are a short-term high-risk service, which means we don't provide long-term ongoing support, but we do refer on to other services that can. So we will refer on to, counselling services. We run the Freedom Programme, which is a 12-week programme for female survivors of domestic abuse. Each week we talk about a different kind of aspect of a perpetrator's behaviour, the impact it has on us as women, the impact it has on children, and the sort of warning signs to look out for. And it's just a lovely group, honestly, to just be in a woman-only space, having some tea and biscuits, talking about their experiences. It's a really lovely space to be in. So you can always refer women over to us for the Freedom Programme as well. And then just briefly, MARAC. MARAC is a multi-agency risk assessment conference. We share information about the cases where we believe there is a significant risk of harm or homicide. Anybody can refer to MARAC, and you don't need consent. It's always best to get consent, of course, but there are times where it's not safe to do so. So we do take referrals at MARAC without consent. The aim of it is that there's a key representative from each agency. So health, social care is chaired by police. We're there to represent our survivors. And we come up with a multi-agency safety plan. So the things that come of that are things like special schemes on an address that the police can put, so if 999 is called, they come quickly, or an app on a survivor's phone that means the police can track them quickly. So all sorts of things that can come out of MARAC that can be practically helpful, and it's all about managing high risk. And just a bit of local context. So our MARAC is really busy. MARACs traditionally were held monthly. They're not statutory, they're not a requirement, but they are best practice. So every borough in London has a MARAC. They used to be monthly, then it went to fortnightly, and in Croydon we're now weekly. We hear around 20 cases each week. Croydon remains, I think, number 2 in London for rates of domestic abuse. We're really up there, really high rates. It doesn't mean that there's more domestic abuse than in other boroughs. It means that more is reported, more people come forwards, maybe there's more recognition. There's lots of reasons why that might be, but either way, it's rife, it's overwhelming, it's really difficult. So in 2022, we had 790 cases at MARAC, which is a lot, because these are only the cases where we believe there's a significant risk of harm. And then FJC, we get 300, we get sort of 100 referrals a month, basically, around that, sometimes more. So a busy service. And I said at the beginning, we've got quite a few open domestic homicide reviews. There's actually a couple more since then, which is terribly sad. But what comes of it is learning. People can learn from it. They're all published. So they become, really accessible, and they're really important actually to learn about domestic abuse and learn how agencies can better respond. So that's FJC. That's what we do. This is how to contact us. Please, I just urge any of you, if you ever have any queries about domestic abuse, if you're ever worried about a family that you're working with, if you ever have a question, no matter how silly you think it is, just call us or email us, and we'll always be there to have that chat, to have that conversation. And if nothing comes of it, that's absolutely fine. It's just always better to ask the question than not. Thank you. Okay. Any questions?
Hello. Yes. Are there any questions for Helen? Thank you, Helen.
Sorry, I'm just looking up. There's some questions in the chat, I think. Oh no, no questions. Just what does FJC stand for? It's Family Justice Centre. We changed it then to FJC, but of course everyone just says then, what does FJC stand for? So it's back to Family Justice Centre. Yeah.
Can I ask, sorry, just a very quick, you talked about running the Freedom Programme, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
We do that as well in Lewisham. Do you know of anyone who runs the CODA programme at all? Or CG, it used to be called CGP programme in Croydon.
I don't know that programme
Okay.
at all.
It's Children Overcoming Domestic Abuse, so it's mothers and children. It's kind of comes on after Freedom. Just
No,
thought
I
I'd check if
don't,
anybody
but
here knew.
that sounds lovely.
Yeah.
The services we have don't just work with children independently. They're called Bamboo and
Yeah,
Victim
and
Support,
is
but
that
I don't know
spelled
that
like
programme.
Bamboo the...
No, it's with a U, not a double O.
Brilliant, fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to definitely look that up. Brilliant, thank you.
And do you need a referral for that, Helen, or is that some bits you can access directly?
Oh, hi, Ree.
Hi.
Hello,
Yeah.
Reilly.
I think you might need an agency referral. I'm not sure actually.
Okay.
Let me put the link to Bamboo in the chat so you can have a
Okay,
look, because it
perfect.
is, I don't know them that well. Someone's asked, do we run the Freedom? We run the Freedom Program. I don't know if Bromley Croydon Women's Aid do it as well. Oh, you do? Yeah, right. That's good. The more the merrier. We have so many referrals, so that's great.
And has
Can I-
anyone heard
sorry.
of the Voice programme? So it's a new one that's been developed by Kathy Press and Rachel Williams, which is a kind of just another. It's very similar to the Freedom Programme, but we're still running that. I didn't know if anyone in Croydon had heard of the Voice programme.
Yeah, it was Kathy and Rachel that trained me on Freedom, and they've sort of splintered off and done their own thing. But I don't know much about it. We're still going to stick with Freedom, I think.
Thank you. Sorry.
Can I ask a question about women fleeing domestic violence who've got no recourse to public funds? Because I know of at least 2 in local refugee hotels. The police put them there, but they've got no further support. Is it best to just contact you, the
Definitely.
FJC, to gain support? I tried Children's Social Services, but got nowhere.
I mean, if there are children involved, social care have a statutory duty to pick those cases up and provide support.
They didn't though, because one of the social, I think when they contacted one of the women concerned, they just said, when you were in the hotel, do you feel scared for yourself and your child? And she, because the hotel's so secure, had to say no. So that was the end of it.
Send our way for sure.
I will, thank you.
Right, thank you, Helen. Next on the agenda is Sarah Middleton. So over to you, Sarah, from the Drive team. Hello. Right, I can't hear Sarah at the moment.
No, I can't either.
You got a mic on?
Yeah, I've got my mic on.
Share my screen with you, ladies and gents. Good morning. Brian Reilly, National Centre for Domestic Violence. My history is I was a police officer before I worked for NCDV. So I was in the police for 30 years in the Met in London, and been working for NCDV for around 7 years now. Let me just get onto the right piece where I can share this screen. Here we go. Now, with the having listened already to the first presentation, Helen's fantastic. There's probably quite a few of you know already about what we do at NCDV. So this morning is just to give you a quick flavour for those of you that maybe don't know, and then encourage you to get in touch if you think this is something that you can spread among the rest of your staff. So what do? We help people to gain injunctions against their abusers. Helen's gone through that already, so I don't think I need to cover it again. But we are, although we're called the National Centre for Domestic Violence, we also deal with domestic abuse, coercive control, financial control, etc. Everything that's covered under the law. So we specialise as a CIC, so we're a community interest company. We specialise in obtaining injunctions against abusers. 3 different types that we work with, shown on the screen: non-molestation orders, occupation orders, and prohibited steps orders. I think you probably all know what they are, but a quick run through: non-molestation orders are to do with people. So I'm abusing my partner and she's granted a non-mol. It limits the contact I can have with her or where I can be. So I can't go around to her home address, can't go to her school, children's school, her workplace. And if I do anything to breach the non-mol, then that is an arrestable offence. If I'm arrested, charged, go to court, up to 5 years imprisonment for breaching a non-mol. We'll then look to see if we can help them get one or both of the other 2 orders at the same time. So occupation orders to do with premises. So we share a place together. If I'm served with an occupation order, then I have to leave. And prohibited steps orders are to do with children. So if we've got kids together, it will put controls and limits on where and when I can see the children. We were established in 2002 by a guy called Steve Connor, who helped a friend of his who couldn't get access to legal aid, and he helped to go through the process to get an order. Now, everything that we do is free to the end users, which is the critical bit. So it doesn't matter what your financial situation is, we will get you help getting these orders and sort out solicitors without charging you anything at all. Trained over 130,000 police officers. Around about 60% of our referrals come from the police. Also trained around about 5,000 Mackenzie friends. So if we can't get legal aid for the person, our next option is to get a pro bono injunction. So this is where the solicitor does the work for free. We have over 350 solicitors firms who do work for us. So we'll tap into their pro bono allocation. If that's not available, then we can use a Mackenzie friend. These are volunteers who have some training in this field, and they can help and support and guide the person through the court process. Again, free. So a really important part of our process, and making sure that we're not charging anybody. So, in fact, these figures for last year. So we had around about 92,000 referrals came through to us. So we started off as the London Centre for Domestic Violence. We're now the national, so the whole of England. Led to us gaining around about 10,000 orders. Most of them were through legal aid. Around about 4,000 were pro bono. So using a solicitor and their goodwill to get this for free for the victim by us being the go-between. And that number of orders is around about 39% of all the orders in the UK last year. So we're a very big player in this field. So benefits of the protection orders. I'm sure you get this yourself all the time. So empowerment, take control, speedy and flexible, improve feelings of well-being for the person, clarity for workplaces and for agencies such as housing, etc. That next one down. So for me, the main thing that we do is create that break, create that gap between the abuser and their victim, so that the victim can then make some decisions about what they want to do with the rest of their life. I was out doing a presentation this morning at a job centre in London. Around about 40 staff I spoke to. One of them came up to me afterwards and said, I'm going through this right now, and this is this is what I need. I didn't know you existed. And she said the abuse that she's suffering from an ex-partner, it is just affecting everything in her life. So her work life, her home life, her mental health, her well-being. And she said, what I need is just that gap, just to get him out of my life, so I can start making some decisions and getting on with the other part of my life. So for me, what we do is it's about trying to create that break, trying to create that gap, so people can make some decisions about what they want to do. Breaches may result in prosecution. So if I'm served with an order by my partner and I don't breach it, it has no effect on my life. So I haven't got to tell my boss. It doesn't appear in my police record. I'm not going to be recalled to prison. I haven't got to tell my family. It only becomes live if I breach it. So for a lot of victims, this is a more acceptable option for them to go down. If I breach it, I can be arrested, go to prison for up to 5 years. The proof necessary in the civil court is balance of probabilities. And as it says at the bottom, referring your client is free, and the process for them is also free. So we get in touch with a person. We'll do a case assessment to see if there's enough evidence for us to be able to get an order. Take into consideration some aspects of the Family Law Act that we have to abide by. And then if the person doesn't want to go ahead, or we don't think there's enough evidence, then we go to the right-hand side of the screen and we would try to signpost them towards some other help and support. If we do think we can get an order, we're now at the bottom of the screen and we're going to make a non-notice or without notice application, depending on what their circumstances are and what the level of risk is to their safety. Most orders we apply for are without notice, which means that the first that the abuser knows about it is when one of our process servers turns up on the doorstep to serve the notice. So the protection is instant for that victim. So this screen just shows how we manage to do it for free for people. So if someone's entitled to legal aid, go down the left-hand side of the screen, contact one of the solicitors on our panel. So we've got a legal aid job here for you. Can you do it? They say yes. We'll do the paperwork for them, send them the paperwork bundle. They meet the victim at court, get the order. They can claim around £800 from the legal aid board for each of these jobs that they do. If we do the paperwork, then we charge the solicitor around about £180 for that paperwork bundle. That £180 from each job on the left-hand side goes to finance what we do on the right-hand side. So if the person isn't entitled to legal aid, not a problem. We'll do all the paperwork for free. We will then send it to either a pro bono solicitor or a Mackenzie friend. They'll go to court and get the order, send it back to us. We serve it on the abuser. We're not going to charge the victim for doing all that paperwork and the contact with the solicitors, etc. So you can see down both sides, lack of access to finances, not going to cause a problem. So when I do the presentation, I'll talk about how you can do referrals. So you can either do it through our website or through an app on your phone. It takes seconds. All we need is a person's name and their phone number. We will then contact them and do everything with them. Through our website, it's the Refer Direct button. So just in summary, the presentation that I deliver is around about 45 minutes. So if you think this is something that would be useful for your staff, then Kay has all my contact details. More than happy for you to get in touch, and let's try and find a convenient time and date to do it. But summary of the session would be how easy it is to contact us, what we do when that call's received, the legal aid assistance, how we do the paperwork, go to court, the timing for the process. So we would look to get every case completed within 24 hours, if at all possible. So if you referred somebody to us at, let's say, midday today, we would look to have everything done and the order in place. So the order's in the abuser's hands by midday tomorrow. So it's all about speed, because this is safeguarding and trying to protect people. And that is it. Ladies and gents, that was a very quick run through. Does anyone have any questions at all, please?
Right, thank you, Brian, for jumping in there, and also for crushing in. You have so much to say, and you managed to get that into a very small amount of time. We are slipping a little bit on the agenda, so maybe if we could welcome Sarah back and see if she's able to.
Can you hear me this time?
I can hear you.
Yeah, everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Anyway, I'll get back.
I think you've muted yourself now, Sarah.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? And can everybody
Yes.
see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm from the DRIVE project, which is a domestic abuse perpetrator program in Croydon. We work primarily out of, well, we worked primarily out of the South BCU, but we're now in all we were going into all BCUs in London. So we're a perpetrator service that works one-to-one, so we don't do groups. So what we believe in is that it's not acceptable. This is not acceptable. We work with high risk, high harm perpetrators of domestic abuse. So medium to low risk. There's another service in Croydon for that. We mainly get our referrals from MARAC. So they come via the MARAC. So that the victim's heard at MARAC, and then depending on the eligibility and what's going on with the perpetrator, we take him into the DAP panel, which is the domestic abuse perpetrator panel, and we discuss him or her there. So what we do is we apply a whole system approach, and we work multi-agency alongside working on the case. So we challenge perpetrators, and we work with partner agencies like police, social services, probation, and IDFA services as well to disrupt their behaviour. So we advocate for change, we advocate for systems change, and feel, and work so that the perpetrator loses control and doesn't get away with being abusive and their abusive behaviour. And eventually we obviously want them to stop. So sorry, let me go back. We reduce repeat victims. We reduce harm caused to victims and children. We reduce the number of serial perpetrators of domestic abuse, and we intervene earlier to protect families from living with domestic abuse. So we've got like criteria that we have for DRIVE. So in order to work, if we're working face-to-face and we're doing behaviour change work, we need consent from the victim. So we are victim focused, and if the victim doesn't consent, then we do not intervene. We do not provide support. We also need IDFA oversight. So ideally, when we're working with a case, that the victim is engaged with an IDFA, and he or she is receiving that bespoke support from the IDFA in order to kind of help themselves, and also so that we can make sure that what the perpetrator is telling us is what's going on, because a lot of the time that's not the case. They're very good at manipulation. They'll highly manipulate professionals. So we need that IDFA oversight is really important for us. We also need an active lever. So we're a consent-based service. We're not statutory. So we need a lever. So that lever mostly presents as a social worker, or can be a probation officer, and they facilitate that introduction for us, and then we take it from there. The only time we don't need a lever is when we work with we do disrupt work, which I'll get onto later on in the presentation. So in order for us to work effectively, we need robust information sharing and a multi-agency approach to this to the family, to the perpetrator. We can't, without multi-agency buy-in, we can't do a. I think Helen touched on that earlier about how important multi-agency work is and information sharing. So it says we require information including MARAC, DAT referrals and minutes. So when we're working our case, when we get a perpetrator that's allocated to us, that's referred into us, we need the literature that goes with that case. So we need MARAC referral, the MARAC minutes, the DAT minutes, which is domestic abuse perpetrator panel minutes. We need the police intelligence, the DASH-RIC assessment, and that informs our risk assessment on how we are going to safely make contact with the perpetrator. I was going to mention something, I can't remember, I'll get back to that. So this kind of tells you, is a flow chart on how things work. So we get referrals in through MARAC, and then they go in to the perpetrator panel where we have a police SPOC, social care SPOC, a healthcare, mental health care SPOC, housing, probation, and of the women's sector, which is usually the IDFA service. So then we discuss that in the panel, and then we decide whether that case is going to get referred into us. So then it gets referred in and it goes straight to a case manager. So then when it gets referred in, it gets decided on whether this is going to be disruption or diversion support or behaviour change. So diversion support and disrupt will work alongside behaviour change, but sometimes we just do disrupt, and that will be where they're really, really high risk, where usually disrupt cases are where the perpetrator has got multiple victims, multiple children, and we can link up all those other boroughs where those victims and children are residing and make them aware of the perpetrator's risks. There are many different facets to disruption work, and again, it can be done alongside behaviour change. Tells you about the different types of work that we do. So the diversion support, so a lot of the time with our cohort, they live extremely chaotic lifestyles. So diversion support is sometimes to find them housing, to help them with their finances, to help them with substances, their mental health, and sometimes if you can kind of support them with that, it takes them away from constantly trying to go back to the home, with constantly trying to go back to the victim and, you know, disrupt and pass that chaos onto their lives and their children's lives. We also, what else we can do with diversion support is sometimes if we're working really well with the IDFA, we can tell the IDFA with us, and then gives IDFA the time span to ring that victim and get some more disclosure, and you know, for the victim to feel safe and free to talk. A lot of the time perpetrators will just be on their phones in their life, not leaving them alone, and so we can help to kind of divert that and divert them away from the victim and allow the victim to have freedom to speak and to receive support. So behaviour change intervention. So ideally, we will really want our perpetrators to come and do behaviour change. So that's tailored, structured one-to-one sessions where we challenge them, we support them, we talk about healthy relationships, we do trauma-informed work, we do a little bit of CBT, and we talk about effects of domestic abuse on children, emotional management. So with the behaviour change, it's not a set programme that they need to go through, like, okay, you're going to tick off this box and we're going to move on to this activity. It's just as and when, and it's bespoke. And sometimes you'll plan to do a behaviour change activity, you'll get into the session and something's happened and it all just, and you have to change tack and do something else. So it really is bespoke. So disrupt. That's where we use our multi-agency safeguarding approach. We work alongside the police, the criminal justice system, housing, and this is to disrupt them. So this is to kind of stop them in their tracks. So again, working alongside DAP and MARAC coordination, if they're gang affiliated, we make sure that the gangs team are aware that they've got a victim, that they've got a partner that they're abusing. We've got social media pages, like we've got a fake Facebook page where we can do a social media sweep on them. Again, MARAC and MASH referrals for other victims and children in other boroughs or other areas of the United Kingdom. We can also work alongside the police to kind of track information if they're not nationals from the UK. We work alongside the police to find out if they've got a criminal history in their home country. And really, it's all about the victim. But as mentioned with disrupt work, we do not need the victim's consent because we're working covertly. So disrupt is where we work covert. Okay, so clients. So this was taken from our figures from January 23 to March 23. So we found that, like, we are a support service, right? So although that can be quite controversial and people sort of think, well, perpetrators should just need to be punished. But a lot of the time, if you're supporting them in the right way, they are moving away. They are moving away from that abusive behaviour and being abusive to that victim. So we found that 83% had 3 or more needs. So the most highest being children and families needs in that area, needs with mental health and psychological well-being, and substance misuse was also 27% of our cases within that time span needed that support. So adverse childhood experiences, a lot of the time the perpetrators, they come with just a whole manner of issues and trauma that they've experienced throughout their lives. So from the cohort that we took from that time, 30% had at least one adult childhood experience and 7% had 4 or more. Now, also, it's important to note here that that's what they tell us. They're very, very guarded, very, very secretive. A lot of them have had professionals throughout their lives, have been in care, they've been in children's homes, have been in young offenders institutions. So they're very, very suspicious of professionals. So a lot of these figures are just what they disclose to us. So I think there's a lot of hidden needs there that are not showing on this slide. So again, our needs there in Q4. So this was direct contact cases. So obviously these are ones where we have direct contact with, and as you can see, children, families and parenting is huge. They've got a really high need for that. Social, community and identity support is also another high one, and their well-being. It's huge, the needs that they have, and it's really, really complex. But this slide hopefully kind of gives you some insight as to sign of what the kind of work that we do. So we do our needs assessment. When I say the behaviour change is bespoke, we'll be looking at that needs assessment and different work with the perpetrator alongside those needs. Okay, so this is just some service user feedback that I've managed to obtain from what they kind of disclose. We get them to do a feedback form at the end. So I've learned a lot about myself, and it was great to meet someone who cared. I would not have got this far without drive intervention. I've come to recognise what I thought I had lost and remember what my potential is. It's made me realise it's not outwards but within. Again, therefore I am grateful, and I've learned a lot. And when we asked them what they would think, when they think drive, what do they think of? And one reply was dedication and respect. So service manager is Kelly McDonough, and the team leader for the South BCU, so that's a team leader that covers all of Croydon, Bromley and Sutton, is me. So if you have any referrals, or you feel like you want to refer someone into drive, you can contact me, and then what will happen is I will send you a DAP referral form, and then they will be listed for the DAP panel. And it's important as well to highlight that the DAP domestic abuse perpetrator panel also works to disrupt and divert and maybe signpost perpetrators that we can't take on, because obviously we've got a capacity, and if we're at capacity, and we've got that panel as well to kind of be victim focused and hold perpetrators to account.
Right, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
That was excellent, thank you.
I don't know how to stop. Oh, yeah, I'll stop sharing. There we go. Thank you. I don't know how to stop sharing the screen. I was having a bit of a panic.
Don't worry, don't worry.
Are there any questions in there?
Hi,
No.
do you know if there's anything equivalent in the borough of Merton?
I don't know currently, but we will be going into Merton. I'm not sure when. I can, let me, if you email me, I'll put my email in the chat. I'll be able to get that information for you, but I don't have it to hand, but I can get it, because it's like we're doing it in phases.
No, that's great. I'll send you an email then. Thank you.
Yeah, send me an email, and then if we're not going to be going in until like next year, which is probably likely, then I can tell you I'll be able to find out other services that may be available in Merton.
Okay, thank you.
We've
Welcome.
also got a question. What is the name of the low risk harm service?
Right, so that's Restart. I'm not sure if Restart are doing a presentation today. Are they, Kate? I don't know. No. So that'll be Restart, and it's also a Safe Lives initiative. So that's, I've got to mention that we're from Safe Lives. We deliver from we deliver for Safe Lives. So yeah, it's called Restart. Let me write that in, and that's for low to medium risk perpetrators. And I think Restart do groups as well. So they can do a group approach, and I think they do one-to-one.
Great, thank you for that, Sarah.
Any more questions? No. Okay, once again, apologies for the beginning and I don't know what happened to my sound. Thank you, everybody.
Sorry, I did ask, I've got a question in the chat about age groups, sorry, before you leave. The age
groups. Yeah, we take anyone from 16 and upwards.
Okay, brilliant. Sorry if I didn't see that before. Yeah, thank you.
Worries.
Right. Let's we have Abby Preston speaking next from RASASC.
Hi everyone, thank you, Kay. Let me just pop my slides up on the screen. Right, so I'm just going to talk really briefly about kind of sexual violence, some of the context and some of the kind of impacts of sexual violence, and then introduce what we do at RASASC. So RASASC stands for the Rape and Sexual Abuse Support Centre. We're also known as Rape Crisis South London. My name's Abby. I manage our training, prevention, and outreach programs. So when we talk about sexual violence, we are talking about any behavior of a sexual nature which is unwanted and which takes place without consent or without understanding. That encompasses an enormous range of different behaviors. Just some of them are up on the slide here. So I'll let you have a read of those. It's absolutely not kind of a complete list of everything that could constitute sexual violence. Really similarly to domestic violence and to what Helen was talking about earlier, sexual violence is a type of violence that is recognized as a form of violence against women and girls, and it's recognized as that globally. What that means is that it is disproportionately perpetrated against women and girls, and it's disproportionately perpetrated by men and boys. That's not to say that men and boys can't experience sexual violence or that women and girls can't perpetrate it, but there is a huge imbalance in terms of the gender of who we see perpetrating and who we see experiencing sexual violence. And And that also means that there are particular sort of gendered impacts, right, and barriers to coming forward that men and boys and women and girls are experiencing differently because of their genders. And people's ability to kind of speak out and report is also absolutely like impacted and compounded by other social inequalities. So it's not just about gender. We know that people's experiences are absolutely shaped by ethnicity, religion, culture, disability, age, class, sexuality. And we're also really aware that sexual violence is perpetrated within a whole range of contexts, right? So hopefully looking up at the screen, you can kind of see how, you know, there are forms of sexual violence that might be perpetrated within intimate relationships, but also within, you know, families, within groups or gangs, online as well, in the online space, in workplaces, in institutions, like, you know, in residential homes, religious institutions, and all of those contexts absolutely like shape and create kind of additional complexity around what people's experiences look like and what they might feel like. And all of these forms of sexual violence are very much connected on what we call like a continuum of sexual violence, which means that really often someone will have multiple experiences of sexual violence that might overlap, that might be kind of at the same time. And it might be also at different points throughout the course of their life. And there's absolutely an overlap with experiences of domestic violence and relationship violence. I just want to bring that up because I know we've been talking about domestic abuse a lot this morning. And oftentimes the media sort of paints sexual violence as something that is perpetrated by a stranger. But the reality is that in the vast majority of cases, the perpetrator is someone known to the survivor, and sometimes that is a partner. It might also be a family member, like a parent, or someone in another kind of trusted relationship. I suppose just speaking a little bit about that kind of media narrative, something that we're really kind of aware of at RASASC is that when you start to look at what the media tells us about sexual violence and the picture that the media paints of sexual violence, there are a lot of myths and a lot of misinformation around what sexual violence is, what it looks like, who perpetrates it, who experiences it, and also about who and what is responsible. So I think if you look at a lot of these kind of headlines, you can see the responsibility either implicitly or sometimes explicitly being placed on women to kind of protect themselves from sexual violence, which is painted as this thing that is sort of inevitable. Much more rarely do you see prevention messages aimed at perpetrators, at men, or at potential perpetrators of sexual violence. We often kind of tell women they need to protect themselves from being raped rather than telling everyone that we need to not rape or abuse people in our lives. There are also really specific myths that we know create barriers for survivors relating to the idea that sexual violence is about sex and sexuality and sexual kind of attraction. When in reality, what we see time and time again is that sexual violence is absolutely about power and control. And again, I think that comes back to what I was saying a bit earlier around how, you know, most people know the person who raped or abused them. That in turn is, you know, can create like a real added barrier around disclosing our experiences, and also even around kind of naming our experiences of sexual violence, right? We've got this big kind of all-encompassing narrative around, you know, sexual violence being this thing that happens you know, in public, usually at night in a dark alleyway, perpetrated by a stranger. Oftentimes it's painted as something that occurs because of alcohol in one way or the other, you know, either the survivor was drinking or the perpetrator was drinking. And so we've got this narrative, and we know that, you know, while that narrative is sometimes reality, it's quite a skewed and quite an inaccurate portrayal of what's actually happening. And that creates a huge barrier to people kind of naming their experiences of sexual violence, right? I know that Helen earlier spoke about, you know, the work that she does at the FJC and how so often victim survivors of domestic abuse are, you know, unable to kind of name or understand or conceptualize their experiences as sexual violence. And I think part of that is because there are so many myths kind of floating around in culture around kind of what sexual violence looks like, who experiences it, and also like really importantly, what counts as consent. Yeah, I don't have a lot of time to kind of get into that today, but I'll just share, under the law, consent to any kind of sexual activity requires freedom and capacity, right? Lots of different things that might impact on someone's capacity, and lots of different things that might impact on someone's freedom. But coercive control, right, or being in an abusive relationship, absolutely has an impact on someone's freedom to consent. So yeah, I mean, in terms of the impact of this, in terms of this kind of narrative and all of these myths, and what we call rape culture, which is, the culture that we live in, where sexual violence is normalized and is minimized and is really often excused. The impact of kind of living in that culture has a huge impact, right, on our perceptions and our beliefs around sexual violence as professionals and also just as kind of citizens. It also means that really, really often those who have experienced sexual violence, who most of the time are women, are blamed or held responsible in some way by, that could be people in their lives, that could be professionals, that could just be sort of the media. And those who perpetrate sexual violence, who really often are men, are really often excused or really often have their actions minimized. Like I say, this can create like really complex barriers for people to be able to kind of name their experiences of sexual violence or sexual harassment, or to seek support around those experiences. And it also there's a really concrete impact of this as well, right, in terms of bias in the criminal justice system. And we know that at the moment, about less than 1%, it fluctuates, but I think at the moment it's less than 1% of reported rapes end in a prosecution. And again, I think, that obviously creates barriers for survivors about how able they feel to kind of engage with that system and seek support. And in some areas of society, there absolutely, over the course of the last sort of 10 years, has been a focus on challenging cultures of kind of victim blaming. And there has been less focus, I think, on kind of challenging and changing the minimizing, I guess, and the fact that we really often perceive sexual violence as something that is like normal and inevitable. One of the things that we really try to do in all of the work that we do at RASASC is to kind of change the focus, right, to challenge the abusive behavior, and to hold accountable the people who perpetrate acts of sexual violence, and while at the same time kind of starting to create space for survivors to speak about their experiences. In terms of the impact of sexual violence for survivors, I mean, I've talked a little bit about kind of self-blame, and about kind of feelings of responsibility. I just kind of wanted to use this slide to highlight just how incredibly varied the impacts of sexual violence for survivors can be. That could be emotionally, that could be psychologically, it could be socially, it could be kind of spiritually. It can impact on folks' education, it can impact on their friendships, their relationships, absolutely on their relationship with themselves, and with their bodies as well. We really, really believe at RASASC that there is no kind of right or wrong or normal way to feel after sexual violence, or way to respond. It absolutely is different for each person, and it can change day to day and month to month and year to year. It's absolutely not kind of a linear process. As a lot of you are probably really aware, anyone who's experienced any type of trauma in their life will kind of find ways to cope and to survive with the impacts of that trauma. These are kind of some of the ways that someone who's experienced sexual violence might respond as ways of kind of coping and surviving with those impacts, with the emotional and the psychological and the physical impacts of what's been done to them. This includes things like drinking and taking drugs. It includes self-harm, and self-injury. It includes different types of mental health presentations. It also absolutely includes like accessing support. It includes becoming, involved in activism, wanting to support others. And it's also really, really common for someone to kind of carry on as, quote, like normal, right? To like appear as if nothing has happened. That could be for months, that could really often be for years after the sexual violence has taken place. And that's absolutely kind of a way that people use of coping and surviving. Again, we really kind of emphasize at RASASC that there is no right or wrong way to respond. There's no kind of good or bad ways of coping. There are simply ways of coping. We really try to recognize that everyone kind of copes the best that they can in that moment with the resources that they have. We know that oftentimes responses to the different ways that survivors might have of coping will focus on the way of coping, right? They'll focus on the self-injury or they'll focus on the eating patterns or whatever that may be. Less often do responses get at kind of what is underneath the way of coping. So kind of seeking to understand what's kind of caused someone to get to that place, which really often is this experience of the sexual violence. That kind of work we believe is absolutely crucial and is kind of underpins what we try and do. Everything that we do at RASASC is underpinned by the empowerment model. So if you're not familiar, the empowerment model is around acknowledging that sexual violence is about asserting power over someone else and ignoring their choices. And so support needs to come from the opposite of that. Support needs to be about empowering survivors. It needs to be about kind of facilitating their ability to connect with their own power and their own kind of inner resource. It's a holistic model, which means it underpins every type of work that we do, which I'll talk about in a minute. And it's very much based on kind of our, the decades that we have of experience working with survivors. The real aim is to facilitate survivors' ability to take back choice, to make choices, and to have those choices be respected and to develop trust in themselves. And there's lots of different ways that we do that. So I'll just share really quickly a slide that talks about kind of what we do at RASASC. So we deliver the 24/7 rape and sexual abuse support line, which I will talk about separately in a minute. We have also got a counseling service. So we offer an adult counseling service as well as a children and young people's counseling service. So we support through counseling women and girls from the age of 4 who have experienced any type of sexual violence, and that could be at any point in their lives. And we offer up to a year of counseling, and we also have some group therapy kind of following on from people's individual therapy for adults. And then for children and young people, we offer play therapy as well. So we can, lots of different kinds of counseling that are age appropriate. As well as that, we offer massage therapy to some of our clients. So to women who are, who are looking for kind of some body work. We do have a massage therapist. In addition to counseling, we've got an advocacy service. And basically, our advocates kind of support people with any aspect of the criminal justice system, from reporting all the way through that process, and to kind of making any complaints against the police around the way that the police have treated their case. And also sitting under our advocacy service, we've got a casework service, which supports survivors with aspects of their lives that maybe aren't directly related to the criminal justice system or to sexual violence, but might be impacted. So really often that's housing and welfare benefits. In addition to that, we've got our training and prevention service and our outreach service as well, which is what I manage. So we can provide training to any professional who might come into contact or has come into contact with sexual violence as a part of their role, on all aspects of kind of understanding and responding to sexual violence. And And then our prevention work is really aimed at young people. So we work in schools and all other different kinds of youth settings, delivering workshops and programs that are focused on challenging harmful myths and stereotypes, and on promoting kind of positive messages about consent and sex and relationships. And we are kind of available to support people on a consultancy basis as well.
Hi, Abby. I'm afraid it's been amazing what you've had to share. We are running quite a bit out of time now. If there's anything else that you want to share above your slides, then obviously we'll be happy to, if you want to add anything with the notes. And also, if there are any questions, if you pop them in the chat for Abby, then she'll be able to see that. We will be sending your slides out, Abby. So if I'm really sorry to interrupt you, because it was captivating what you had to say. But can we then talk to Seema from Jigsaw for You, the Helping Hands project? Seema?
Hi, yes.
Thank you.
So Jigsaw for You is it's predominantly a mental health and wellbeing charity in Southwest London. So the areas that we support are Croydon, Sutton and Middleton, but also we support the periphery of those neighbouring areas too. So in terms of domestic violence, we have the Helping Hands project, which is a befriending service. And with the referral process, it's quite straightforward. You can either just send me the contact details of the survivor, and it could be men or women. Previously, we used to have women only, but we realised during lockdown and beyond that actually men also need supporting. So with that, the types of befriending and things that we do are emotional and practical support. So it could be if someone has immigration problems or they've got language barriers, sometimes we can provide a volunteer who can help them along that process. It could be filling in forms, it could be navigating around different systems, it could be also one-off pieces of support, so attending court with them. We have someone who can do that. Or it could be longer term, so it could be 4-6 months. But equally, we know that with domestic violence, it's like snakes and ladders. Just when you think that things are stable, the rug will get pulled out underneath. So actually, we don't just drop someone after a certain period of time. We make sure that there is managed support or managed transition if they move on to another borough. So we are reliant upon volunteers. So this is twofold, really. We are looking for volunteers, but we also do the support aspect. So like I said, it's befriending, emotional and practical support. So with the emotional support, it could just be remote for an hour or two each week. All our service users, they know that they're the volunteer that they're paired with, they are not experts in any field. So they're not counsellors, they're not therapists, they're not IDVAs, they're not social workers, etc. They know that the support that they're going to get is a person who is caring, who has the empathy, who's going to be non-judgmental. And like I say, this is just for an hour or two each week. We know that some people, because of what they've been through, have no ability to come out of their homes, or they have things like fibromyalgia, or they have lots of appointments. If they're under social services, for example, there'll be the call groups where the volunteer can go and assist with those. We have, for example, one lady who was a head teacher before. So she goes along to the meetings because the service user has special needs. So she helps to break down all the information into something which is manageable for her. So we can also help with practical things. So sometimes we can put in referrals to other places where we can have food parcels delivered for 8 weeks or so, but that is only in the borough of Middleton. The great thing about Jigsaw for You is it started off as a children's charity. So when usually our service users, they have children, so we can refer them on into other projects. So for example, we have emotional-based school avoidance, where some children don't want to go to school if they have been victims of crime. But also we have two or three other projects which are aimed at the parents. So Who's in Charge, for example. That's an 8-week course where we find that with domestic violence, sometimes there's learnt behaviour from their children, and they then also go on to present very challenging behaviour towards their parents. So this is, again, just like the other slides that we've seen, it's about giving that choice back to parents and trying for them to try and enforce some discipline and some rules and boundaries. So when people come to Jigsaw for You, they can be referred into these other projects. The other thing that we are very keen on doing is activities for you. So we put on a number of activities throughout the year. This could be things like taking a coachload of families down to Littlehampton for the day, where we cover all the expenses for everything, or it could be a trip for just young people to go to a trip down to the seaside, so they can also experience a different way of living, because sometimes they can become really isolated, and they might think that the only people or the only children who are ever going through trauma or being in a refuge, and actually this is a way to show them actually there is something different that is out there, and it can be quite therapeutic, and they build up their confidence, and they also make friends. And then over time, if they come to more of our activities, they see the same children as well. And it just really just helps with their confidence. So that's just a little bit about what the Helping Hands project do. I mean, I didn't know that I was going to be on here, but I can send out a referral form later and a little leaflet about what we do. So was there anything else that you wanted from this, or if there are any questions about Jigsaw for You or the Helping Hands project?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Carry on.
I was just gonna ask if Seema, if you could email me, just so that I've got your contact details, so that and ways to refer. That's really helpful. Thank you very much. I'll put my email in the chat, but I'll put it in again.
Okay, and what I'll do in the chat is I'll put my email address, my contact number, referral form, and a leaflet as well of the kind of things that the service user can expect from our service, as well as if people are looking for volunteering opportunities as well.
Okay, can we move on to Emma from Bromley and Croydon's Women Aid, please?
Yes, hello. Give me 1 sec to set this up. Yes. Fantastic. Oh, can you all see the PowerPoint if I just get it started? Sorry. Is it not? Sorry, one moment. There we go. Hello, sorry about that. It's like someone said earlier, it's been so long since I was on Zoom. Hi, yeah, my name is Emma. I'm one of the training and engagement officers at Bromley and Croydon Women's Aid. I'm talking to you guys today primarily about our children and young people's offer, because that's the department with which I work in, but I also have an overview of everything that we offer. Oh, what's this gone? Fab. So a little bit about Bromley and Croydon Women's Aid. So Bromley Women's Aid was set up over 40 years ago by some volunteers who are responding to a local need. Croydon had their own Women's Aid until 2015, where they lost a significant amount of their funding, and so that what the money they did have left, they gave to the Bromley arm, and Bromley incorporated the Croydon offer. So that's where Bromley and Croydon Women's Aid came from. We offer a range of confidential and non-judgmental services to help meet the needs of those experiencing domestic abuse and violence. And this this support comes in a range of ways. So we've got refuge services, outreach services, and specialist services, and our aim is to increase the safety of marginalised women and children. Here's a brief overview of our accommodation support. I won't just read it all out to you, but we have safe houses or refuges that are open to single women and children. Some of these are communal, some of these are standalone. We also have dispersed move-on properties under our Safer Futures properties, and these are across Bromley and Croydon. We also have our Safe Bed scheme, which is spaces for women with no recourse to public funds, and that is the council place people there, and that is an alternative to bed and breakfasts, which are very expensive for the council and not ideal for the women fleeing abuse. We have in-house support at these refuges, so there's our counselling service and also support for the children living in refuge through playrooms. And yeah, I'll give you a moment more to read through this. I know I'm probably rattling through this really quickly, but I'm just aware of time. You will get these slides, and I'm going to be on the chat for any questions afterwards if anyone has any. So we also do outreach support, and this is split into our over 25s and our under 25s. So I've heard some people mentioning already about the Keys to Freedom and the Freedom Programme. That's also something that we run at BCWA. Our next support group for Keys to Freedom is starting in January. We also provide support for women with no recourse to public funds, or if they're from the European Economic Area, since the rules have changed like that since Brexit. We also run our Iris project, where we work with GPs in Croydon to provide training to people working in doctors' surgeries. We also can provide our support in the GP space if some women are only able to get out to get to the GP. We can meet them there, and also we take our referrals from GPs as well. We also run a Japanese project, which is a UK-wide project. So anyone from Japanese heritage can contact us and will be referred on to our programme that's funded by the Japanese embassy. We also have our in-house counselling project, where we offer counselling to our women who access our services, and we have our Safer Futures properties, which are the dispersed accommodation. We also have volunteers who help out across all of our projects. Sorry, our children and young people services, this is the department I work in. So we provide one-to-one support for 11 to 24-year-olds. This can be in school or in the community. Obviously not all, if you're 24, you're not in school. So it could be at children's centres or remote. We're very flexible in how this happens. We also run support groups. This is my area. At the moment, I'm just finishing off my first support group that I'm running for BCWA. I've got another one starting in November that I'm taking referrals for. So my email address is at the end of this presentation. So if you know anyone who is under the age of 25 who would benefit from a support group, send them my way. Our next group will be running in the Penge area, which I know is in Croydon, but it's not too far. And our services go across both Bromley and Croydon. We also run school workshops. This is about awareness raising and preventative work with young people. So we've got, we do assemblies, one-off workshops and workshop series, as well as drop-down days for PSHE. We also run the Influencer Programme, which is another project that I run, which is a domestic abuse awareness and campaigning set of workshops for students in Key Stage 4 and 5, so that's year 10 plus. We also run parent and carer workshops, and our service runs the Helping Hands project, which is a preventative education programme in primary schools for children who've experienced domestic abuse. It doesn't explicitly talk about domestic abuse, but it looks at building confidence and having conversations around different emotions that might come up for a young person who's experienced them.
I see that Samantha has got her hand up with a question.
Fab. Oh, I'm so nearly done. I've got this video here, which I'm not going to show you guys because it's going to come to you in your emails, and we're tight on time. But it's a very, if you are interested in our work, give this video a watch because it is wonderful. And then I will just leave these emails up. the training one will come to me and the young people one will come to my manager. Samantha, sorry, what was your question?
Oh, sorry. Just in terms of referrals, we border onto Bromley, so sometimes people might live in Lewisham, but the kids go to a Bromley school. Is that the kind of, would that be sufficient, or do you have to live in Bromley?
I think if a child is in school in Bromley, it's fine. But if you send the referral into the young people email address, I'm still relatively new to this role, but my manager will definitely know and would refer you onto the right place if it isn't us.
Thank you.
Sorry, but we work in Bromley schools, so if a school is interested in hosting us, then those children would access our services there.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna stop sharing now. But yeah, I'll be on this call until the end, so if anyone has any questions, drop them in the chat. I can answer them there as well.
There's also a question saying, are all services open to Croydon residents?
Yes, everything on that PowerPoint is open to Croydon residents.
Thank you, Emma. You did raced through that, but thank you, because I know you have a huge amount of work that you cover, and we will make sure the notes will get out so everyone will have what they need. Right, we're just in time now we've got planned a session which is open to all of you that are here that are providing services, domestic abuse and sexual violence support services in the borough of Croydon. So I've got a few people who would like to speak. We've got Ada from Against Domestic Abuse. If you can just give a little summary of what you do, Ada, and then we will definitely send out all the contact details, etc. in the notes, and then you'll be able to contact Ada if you want to know more. Over to you then, Ada.
Good morning, everyone. I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Ada.
Oh, sorry, apologies.
My name is Ada. I'm Ada Ibezi. Up to last year, I was a primary school teacher, but due to lived experience of domestic abuse, I am now the founder and the CEO for Against Domestic Abuse, which, if you notice, is they're my initials. But it's down to, and I can see here on my screen, Pauline. I stayed in, Pauline works for Hestia, and I stayed in a Hestia refuge, which I found really supported me on my journey. So now I'm no longer in a refuge. So I started off Against Domestic Abuse because I was quite appalled due to the lack of awareness with regards to domestic abuse. Having been a teacher, I didn't actually hear anything or know much about domestic abuse. So what I find is that once you move into the community, and even those who've been through it, it's quite isolating. So now we run Thrive Thursdays, which is it's a drop-in and support group for women who've been affected by domestic abuse. Isolation is something that you suffer with even whilst you're in an abusive relationship and when you do leave. So we provide Thrive Thursdays, first Thursday of the month at Purley Baptist Church, and third Thursday of the month at Old Lodge Lane Baptist Church. And so the reason for that is just so that women who've been affected, who are domestic abuse survivors, can get together, find some friends that they can talk with, share ideas. And the aim is to really bring in people who can then, professionals who can speak on areas that these survivors face. So in terms of housing, financial literacy, and so on. So the idea really is for us to come together, have a coffee morning, talk to each other, and then find some support, that practical support. So that's Against Domestic Abuse. We just started off. So if anybody in Croydon knows any women, we're based around Purley. So if you can send women to us so that we can befriend them, and we can nurture and foster friendships. And then we're going to be moving into also supporting children who've experienced domestic abuse. So yeah, and advocating on their behalf. So thank you, everyone. I'm just whistling through it very quickly because we mentioned time. But thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ada. We will make sure your contact details are in the notes so that people can refer women who might benefit from your service. Next, we've got Pauline Powell from Hestia, that's Croydon and Sutton. Can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Pauline. No.
We're not hearing you, Pauline. Shall we go to Sky and then maybe come back to Pauline? Is that all right? So we've got Sky Alexandra House. Sherika Spence is wanting to share about a service update on what Sky Alexandra House is doing. Have we got Sherika? Right, well, we'll move on to Angelique. Thank you, Angelique.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I know that time is pushing. My name is Angelique. I'm the CEO and founder of Walk With Me UK that offers support and guidance to families that have children with challenging behaviours. Majority of them would be experience aggression, destructive, violent, abusive behaviours, which is often linked to child criminal exploitation, those that have been abused, those that have been excluded from school, and much more. So how this links in with parents that have been affected by domestic abuse is out of 10 families that we work with, at least 9 would have been affected at the time of joining our programme that we offer, which is called the Non-Violent Resistant Approach for Walk With Me UK. And that approach is generally to reduce conflict, to regain some form of empathy and respect, and to keep families connected as much as possible. We find that by the parents using this, they're able to move on in terms of being able to have hope around their situation, which is about empowering, nurturing, and genuinely just giving them some kind of voice so they get access to signposting to other organisations. So it's really important to know what everybody's doing within the community. So without any further delay, I'll leave it there, but I just thank Kay for inviting us to be able to speak and share what we do. Any questions, we'll have the information sent to you. So thank you very much.
Hey, that's great. Shall we try again with Pauline and see if she's able to get some sound?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, brilliant.
I'm
Thank you.
so sorry, it was my headphones.
That's
Technology.
great. Thank you.
Great things about technology. So I'm Pauline Powell. I'm the service manager for Croydon, Sutton and the Middleton Domestic Abuse Services as part of Hestia. So I'm here to talk to you about the Croydon DA service. We have refuge accommodation and floating support service, but frontline service for those women and children who have experienced domestic abuse. We offer a person-centred, trauma-informed approach to all our service users. We have quite an experienced team of support workers. Sometimes they encounter quite a few challenges with housing, access to benefits, supporting women to help the children to access schools or nurseries, registering with GP for physical or mental health support, hospitals for pregnancy and other things that may be concerning them. So we try and work in a multi-agency disciplinary way, working with local partners to enable them to transition and maintain or regain their independence, empowerment and self-confidence. So our refuges are based in Croydon. We have 3 dotted around Croydon, anonymous addresses. We link in with our local GPs. Some places, because we've been established for quite some time, because we were part of Croydon Women's Aid and we've tupered across into different organisations. So people are aware of the addresses. Professionals are allowed to come into our refuges. We have workshops, we have volunteers, we have corporate volunteers who may come into the service to support women and children with activities that they may not have done. We also have a children and family worker who supports the children within our service. So as I mentioned, it's about schools, nurseries, access, assessment for pregnancy, access in hospitals, linking them in with other services. We also have in-house therapy, play therapists and adult therapists who will support our families. We linked in with Met Police quite recently with Gemma. I think it's a new person that's taken over Gemma's position now, but they did produce like a self-defense workshop for our families, which was quite a good take up, and they really, really enjoyed it. So we're hoping to do some more of that. So within our refuges, we work with the statutory services, like social services. Sometimes there are challenging situations with our families and we try to empower them to work with social services. And within that, we work with students who are maybe on a social work placement. So they're usually in their last part of their placement, where they work within the refuge. They work alongside a refuge worker. So it enables them to see what the challenges are for our families, for our women. So when they go out and they become social workers, they have a better understanding of the families that they're working with. We've also just recently worked with mental health nurses as well, because sometimes, you know, the trauma that our survivors endure can impact their mental health, as we all know. We work with faith providers, so they may help us with food donations, clothing donations, monetary donations, helping us to provide activities, recognising some, not all of our faith activities throughout the year. We have a children and family worker, as I said. We just produced a play scheme for the children, summer play scheme, which enabled them to do things that they probably wouldn't have done before. Big trips like Chessington, Sea Life Adventure Centre, going into London, accessing museums, beach trips, activities within the house. We have corporate volunteers, as I said, that come in and do things so that they can have an understanding of, you know, a better understanding of what domestic abuse looks like, because some people do have that perception of what it looks like, and it's not right. We're all there, we all know. So yes, it's good we do encourage to have people coming in. We do encourage some of our local partners to come in and even talk within our coffee meetings that we have with our service users, so that they can see what's around in the local community and they can engage. So they can either volunteer with those agencies, or they can volunteer within Hestia, because Hestia is quite a large agency, covers a lot of London. So it gives them the opportunity to do this. So it's wonderful to see Ada on the call. Yeah, because she is a success story, absolutely. I'm trying to be quick because I know you're pressed for time. We also have digital awareness workshops for our service users now, because that's becoming quite apparent with alleged perpetrators, with trackers, CCTV, locations on phones, accessing, trying to hack into people's accounts. So we have that digital awareness. And the other thing we have is the Bright Sky app, which I will send the link in for the Bright Sky app. So that's an app where survivors, people who are experiencing domestic abuse, can access this app, have it on your phone. It's a covert app that you can have on your phone or your devices, where you can record, you can access any services, any domestic abuse services within the country. in different languages, community languages, but you can also record and keep a record of any domestic abuse that you're experiencing, save photos. And they have had cases, a couple of cases, I think last year, where it went to court and that app was used to support a successful court application. We work with solicitors, we work with housing, the challenges now with the DA bill, in terms of the challenges with housing and housing providers sometimes becoming gatekeepers. And yeah, we work with housing solicitors to try and overcome that and support our families. We work in it's a very much a person-centered, trauma-informed approach to enable survivors to be empowered. We also have a small floating support service in Croydon that you can access, that we can support some people in Croydon who are experiencing domestic abuse. I will put my details in the chat so that you can send a link. We do have a Hestia referral line. I will also put that in the chat. Sorry it's so quick, but I know that you're pressed for time. So thank you. And I can send over any information to you, Kay, so that you can share it with your partners.
Thank you.
So
Yes, thank you for that,
having me.
Pauline. As you can see, we've got a lot of support in Croydon, and what I'll do is I've seen there are questions popping up in the chat. What I will do is make sense of those and bring them together with the answers and put those into the meeting notes. So that should be helpful. If you have any more questions, then do type them up now or email me and I can get them to the right place. So we don't, Sherika seems to have had to leave. I think people are leaving at the moment. Are those of you that are happy, I give you just a quick rundown of our Simply Connect directory for Croydon, which we are logging and updating all of the domestic abuse services on there. And I just wonder if I'm able to quickly just show you how to do that. If you just bear with me one moment. No, I can't. Yeah, right. So can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is the Croydon Voluntary Action website. I don't know if you've seen it, but there is a directories button. And if we click on that, there are a number of food banks, debt advices, etc. on there. But what we were going to do is look under here, find local activities. And then as simple as if you put in domestic abuse, which you can see I've already put in, and then this button here, can you see, we press explore. And at the moment, I've just updated Hestia's information this morning. And if any of you have services you'd like us to add, do let us know. But you can see down here is anything, I've titled them with domestic abuse so they come up, even though there may be counselling or others. Can you see the services? So I just wanted to let you know that that's there. That works with any subject, mental health, etc. But under domestic abuse, that is how you do that. So I hope that is helpful. How do I? Sorry, I'm just trying to work out how to unshare that now. Right. Okay. So thank you all very much for your participation. The recording will be coming out to you and all the details. Thank you because you've all added lots to the session, and keep up the good work.
Can I just ask something before you go?
Absolutely.
Like the local chemist, to me, it's one of the, I can't remember what they called it. It's a sort of like safe space. It says, you know, if you're experienced domestic, is there a list of these places that people can go into, like the local shops, chemists, anywhere?
This is Pauline. I'll check for you. It's Ask Annie, isn't it? I'll check for you and I'll send it over to Kay.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Brilliant.
Cheers.
Any more questions? Anything burning? then I'll say thank you and goodbye, and notes will be coming soon.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
it's been
much.
brilliant.
Thank you.
So